this Friday right here on The Move. A poetry, comedy and storytelling council has been created to close that gap by building support systems, creating opportunities and advocating and lobbying for the creatives behind the mics and the pens. The official launch of the Poetry, Comedy and Storytelling Council will take place on the 16th of August 2025 in Johannesburg, South Africa, where the program will be unpacked, followed by a first phase of a series of provincial workshops in 5 provinces. We find out a little bit more about the Poetry, Comedy and Storytelling Councils and its aim to reshape the landscape for poets, comedians and storytellers all across the country. Joining us on the line to chat more about this is MoAfrika Wa Mokgathi, who is the Poetry, Comedy and Storytelling Council's chairperson. Thank you so much, MoAfrika, for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Jambo Africa.
Good morning. You know, there's so many ways in which we have relayed history, and storytelling for Africans is one of the most important, especially because we have, an oral history that is much richer than our written history. And it is through that oral history that we continue to find who we are, sometimes in dips and drabs, but we do rely on storytelling to be a part of not just our entertainment, but also our history. Let's speak about this in particular, the importance of storytelling within our landscape.
Absolutely. Storytelling as Africans is one of the important, aspects of our culture. We have heard of quotes. The conqueror writes the story, writes the narrative, and for us to be able to consciously write our stories is very paramount. To write the timelines where we are living, where we are able to document and tell the exact things that are happening, it is very crucial. And organizations like this one speaks, to that narrative that historically we were not able to really speak our stories, even though we have found ways of transferring, stories of victories of our people, stories of healing methodologies, indigenous knowledge systems, through telling stories around the fires, and we find ourselves now using other mediums for us to be telling stories, and not only just orally, but then oral becomes one of the ways of relaying these stories, relaying these messages, relaying these healing methodologies, relaying these ways of laughing together. One of the stories that I hold dear was shared by my grandfather, who seemed to be such a very stricter person, but when he would share these comic stories, and I would be like, this guy, so he can, just sway aside. And that has created a lot of building blocks for me and the things that I do, and how intentional I become in also serving the bigger community within the creative and cultural industry, of using storytelling as mediums of preserving.
MoAfrika, let's talk a little bit about that, because one would think that we have really sidelined, especially oral arts or oral creatives. What's happening in that space? What are you seeing that we need to do better? Because it's easy to support something that's visible, like visual art, but an oral tradition, it's very hard to capture and support it, because it's something that happens in the moment.
I mean, the PoeComSto Council Monday comes after Minister Gayton McKenzie's bus parade in last year, August, and the restructuring of how to approach, the creative and cultural industry, for me, was very important. We have the likes of cricket SA, rugby SA, and we don't have similar models in the creative and cultural industry. So I said yes to serve, in this council. And it is for those reasons that we don't know where to start, or we think that we don't know where to start. Preserving works now, it has become, better. We have seen podcasts that are born, and that is way of preserving these oral histories, and to create systems and lobbying for these art codes to be on pedestals. I usually say that, your poetries and your storytelling practitioners are the stepchildren of the creative and cultural industry. So to have a council that really advocates in this manner is to say, you have an opportunity to be able to create the fundamentals of systems that will make sure that come 50 years from now, we will hear Izintomi, Dinonwani, we determine where these need to live. Is it going to be a museum that we are going to open so that the oral history now is housed there? Of course, yes. That is one of our long-time dreams. Yeah, are we going to use the platforms like your YouTubes or your platforms of podcasting? So we are determining those routes, navigating how to further emphasize the importance of storytelling within the creative and cultural industry holistically. Whichever medium, storytelling doesn't only come with sharing all isn't me, but telling these stories of dancers, of filmmakers, that's another form of storytelling. Yeah. So for us to be saying we can produce platforms that will amplify, to go to a festival and all you hear is stories. How beautiful is that? From all levels of professionalism. And this council speaks to do that, speaks to create, that long-lasting legacy and roots for practitioners to make sure that they are ahead. One of the best example that I can make is how comedy in this country has really, owned changing the trajectory of comics in the country. You think of a comedian, the word a dying pauper doesn't really come to mind. But even though, we have seen recently that it is a bit of a challenge, and, we are pushing for larger numbers to be impacted, to also enjoy the creative and cultural industry market share. So to have a council like this is very paramount. Also, I mean, after 31 years and we are seeing GNU, I think that, let's just be hopeful. We are just holding on to hope and see how really it will navigate. Being in the creative and cultural industry for over 25 years. And I'm like, whoa, I'm still young, but but we are still pushing and making sure that there are systems in place for hundreds and hundreds of generations to come.
Well, you guys say that PoeComSto is more than just, an administrative body. I think it brings together two things that really are at the heart of who we are: the storytelling and the sense of community. Because when, these artists, as poets, as comedians and storytellers, when they work in silos, it has proved to be so much harder, not just to penetrate, but also to find, their place within the creative environment. But the forming of a community is something that creates a way, a forging forward in a collective that allows, creativity to happen, but also, an exchange to happen between these creatives as well in that environment. So I want us to speak a little bit more about that. We need to take a break right now, though, MoAfrika. Stay on the line with us. We'll continue speaking about the work of PoeComSto. That's the Poetry, Comedy and Storytelling Council that's about to be formed from the 16th of August 2025.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
C'est notre invitée du jour, la belle Aïna Mwenze. Elle est là, certaine, la belle Boss Lady.
Bonjour Monsieur Jolino.
Parlez-nous un tout petit peu de vous.
Je m'appelle Boss Lady Aïna. Je mets l'accent sur le nom de Boss Lady parce que je mérite cela après le travail fait. Et c'est une rémunération en titre de la personne que je suis devenue aujourd'hui. Épouse et une mère de 4 garçons. Et voilà ce que je peux dire pour l'instant.
Et et vous vous êtes lancé dans le business. Comment c'est venu?
En tant que mère et se retrouvant dans les pays étrangers, particulièrement en Afrique du Sud, je me disais que laisser les enfants sur la charge des travailleurs ou d'une bonne, ça serait pas très intéressant. Je me dis, bon, je dois essayer de m'organiser et trouver un emploi que je peux faire.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Get set and be ready to go. On the Move with Falisa Tawo and Benjamin Mushatama.
All right, you are listening to us right here on Channel Africa on DSTV Channel 802, OpenView 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za. It is our Creative Friday, and we always explore the possibilities in our creatives economy right here on the African continent. Today, we are speaking to Poetry, Comedy, and Storytelling Council that was created to close the gap and build supporting systems and creating opportunities for those who are involved in the long-standing traditions of oral storytelling, poetic expressions, and comedic social commentary. And we're speaking to our guest to unpack this one, and it is a critical conversation indeed. MoAfrika Wa Mokgathi is the chairperson of the council. MoAfrika, let's talk a little bit about creating the systems, because that is where we need to bring together the creatives, because at times creatives feel like they're working in silos. Most of the time they're probably competing for the same tender, to say, there's this one tender that the Department of Arts and Culture has, and only one spoken artist can speak at this particular event, and then we don't actually work in a collective. Are you dealing with some of those kind of challenges in the council to create a more unified force?
Absolutely. And one I think I need to mention is that PoeComSto, it is mandated by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. Hence, I said earlier that the creative and cultural industry would say, but you are focusing on sports. And then the answer that we would get is that, but they are organized. And when you are in need and you hear such an answer, it's so frustrating. So this administration came together to re-strategize, to say, let's allow the creative and cultural industry to organize itself. So the Poetry, Comedy, Storytelling Council of South Africa is one of 17, they call them clusters. It's one of 17 clusters that is propelling the creative and cultural industry via the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. So what is exciting is that we are able to build the narratives of how do we navigate. So somehow the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture is saying to these clusters, now you've been saying you can do it, and here are the reins. So there is a seed funding that they have given us, and to make sure that we are able to go to all the 9 provinces, speak on these matters, and consult with the people on the ground. But what I would like to mention is that everyone is involved. This is where the suggestion box will be empty, because we will be going through it thoroughly. It is such an important, time for us as the creative and cultural industry to be able to create, these routes that will make sure that storytelling, poetry and comedy, they are able to come to the limelight. And also one of the biggest projects that we will be embarking on as PoeComSto Council is to have what we call a data mapping project.
Okay.
So the data mapping project will be going to all the 9 provinces, profiling comedians, poets, and storytellers, and so that they can be an easy access. We don't have to see one face, when brands wants to work with comedians, all they think is a particular people. But this data mapping will be able to think of Eli Siki and find a poet, a comedian, a storyteller on this data mapping. It will be embedded in our website that is recently being finalized. So it will be easy, When you think of Ramashashani, for instance, is there even a poet in Ramashashani?
Sure.
But this data mapping will be able to locate, if any producer, any brand company, they will be able to find these poets, these comedians and storytellers, because they do exist.
Yeah, they do exist, MoAfrika. But where the challenge stands is the fact that some of our creatives are underskilled. They don't have the skills to complement their creative abilities. Are you doing anything in light of that? Maybe also creating avenues for entrepreneurship education?
Absolutely. I just got excited for this question. It is important. So, like I said, that I've been a practitioner, for over 20 years. And it has been one of the challenging things to be able to sustain yourselves, raise a family, be able to live, and not survive as a practitioner. So we have a board of very creative and active practitioners to that matter. So their contribution to make sure that we do relay the right necessary skills to everyone, it's of paramount importance. It's a mandate that is given to say, let us also skill, these practitioners to be able to be self-sufficient. So parallel to the data mapping, we will be doing, workshops to make sure that we don't just leave you with a professional, picture, with a cleaned bio that will be embedded online. But you have the skills to be able to say, if a client is asking you for a commissioned poem or a commissioned work, this is how you navigate it. So we are saying also take yourself seriously, and where else can your work live? Sometimes practitioners get sidelined because of they go and advertise where their work cannot be accepted. You find comic poets. No one was like, comic poetry, what is this? But then if you are able to brand position yourself,
sure,
and this is what we want to leave, to all these creative practitioners, to say, find where your voice can live. Like any other business, trial and test. The first conversation is, are you a company owner? How do we navigate that? We will talk through them, how to register, the SARS compliances, because of also Department of Sports, Arts and Culture will ask how many poets have they applied? You find that it's smaller scales because of they don't have compliance documents, but we will be empowering these practitioners to make sure that they get the best market share of creative and cultural industry, because of we are businesses after all. Our language.
MoAfrika, we're running out of time. Sorry to interject there. I'm sure there's a lot of South Africans listening to this conversation. Where do they go to find out more about the Poetry, Comedy and Storytelling Council?
PoeComSto _council on social media platforms. If you are not getting us, you will be getting us by next week, because of we are indeed starting from ground, going to die.
Well, PoeComSto is spelled rather PoeComSto. Thank you so much, MoAfrika, for joining us here on Channel Africa.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's MoAfrika Wa Mokgathi. That's the Poetry, Comedy and Storytelling Council chairperson. That conversation takes us to 10:30 Central African time. What do you think about that theme and that conversation? +2763 406 9126. It's our WhatsApp number where you can engage with us. Well, let's move on right now. Get our latest sports update from Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.